Robert Plank Show, episode 200 Side Hustles, Part Time Entrepreneurial Ideas, the Sharing Economy, and Just in Time Learning with Nick Loper. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show, where we talk about building an online business and making money. We're here with Mr. Nick Loper, and we're going to talk about, I guess, whatever comes to mind with us. I mean, Mr. Nick Loper talks about these things called side hustles, where you can earn more money, pay off debt, learn new skills, use free time more productively, escape the rat race, and more. So, Mr. Nick, how are things today?
Doing well. We just learned that we're only an hour apart over the hill from you here in California.
Yeah, what are the odds? And you might be my most high-profile guest so far, and we're on episode number 200. So, I mean, it was meant to be in a lot of different ways. And so,
Episode 200. Congrats, man!
the
I just
big,
hit 200 for the side hustle show.
I mean, we're hitting just coincidences left and right. And so, I know that you have a pretty high-profile podcast, a pretty high-profile blog, but I don't know much about you. I don't think our listeners know much about you. So, could you tell us about who you are and what you do and what you have going on?
Well, that's very flattering because I don't really think of myself as being high profile at any of those things. Just a guy try to do the work. So the Side Hustle Show podcast is different part-time business ideas every week. So been like you said, we're 200 episodes deep, so lots and lots of gold in the archives. Lots of really try and dive into the tactical stuff from been there, done that. Entrepreneurs like, hey, how'd you get started? How do we reverse engineer this if we want to apply this to our own business? And then the Side Hustle Nation blog is, a lot of case studies and reports on kind of my own experiments and, ups and downs on the entrepreneurial journey as well.
Awesome. So lots of fun experiments to kind of jump into. So out of all the side hustles that you've done yourself or you've interviewed people about, I mean, what sort of stands out? I mean, what's the most like interesting kind of thing on your mind so far?
Oh my gosh. In the archives, the episodes that have performed best are the ones that are like the most compelling or most accessible stories. So I met a guy in the very early days of the show who earned enough money on Fiverr, which is the marketplace where everything is like $5, who earned enough money on Fiverr to buy a house in his first year on the platform. And I was like, wait, how did that work? Because I'd used Fiverr as a buyer before, but never as a seller, because you figure you get $4 after the sale and like what after the platform takes a cut, and you're like, what could you possibly sell? But he went on and he's like, look, it's the marketplace of goods and services starting at $5. Nick, it's all about the upsells. I was like, okay, told me. So he's like, look, your $5 thing has got to be all, something you've already created. You can create once like a audio file, PDF file. You deliver it, takes 2 seconds. If people want your actual time, they can buy that in the upsell. So he was like kind of a copywriter, PR guy, and gave the example of like this. I'll send you the 7 secrets to a killer like autoresponder sequence or something like that would be his $5 thing, and then I will write message number 1 for you, I will write message number 2 for you, would be in the upsells. So you broke it all down. It was a very fascinating one. That one's really popular. And I met another guy who like makes a full-time living just buying and selling stuff on Craigslist, and he's got like 5 kids, and just like these ones, because they're like everybody's got a Craigslist in their town, like they're accessible to everyone, so those ones kind of do well. For me, one of the most interesting side hustles, like I love self-publishing. I love I've done some freelancing. I've made the bulk of my money from affiliate marketing for years and years. Now people are sponsoring the podcast, which has been fantastic. What else is going on? Like online courses, and you've seen people do like t-shirt sales and just trying to piece together different side hustles all under this umbrella.
Cool. So I mean, it sounds like there's money to be made everywhere, right? Like t-shirts, self-publishing, Fiverr, Craigslist, all these places. And so, I mean, out of all these people that you've talked to, I mean, what's the commonalities? I mean, why do some people do really well on like Amazon or Udemy, and then other people just kind of only dabble, or maybe you're spread too thin? I mean, what's the difference between the people that can pay off or can buy a house from Fiverr in the first year versus people who kind of just fail at it? I mean, is there a commonality there?
Well, I'm sure there is. I don't know if I've fully, unearthed what that is. There are a few themes of the show, and with specifically like the Fiverr guy and the Craigslist guy and even the t-shirt sellers, it's like treating it as a business. So I had somebody who, has done really well selling t-shirts on Teespring, which is kind of a print on demand t-shirt service where, okay, if you don't sell, however many you say you want to sell in this campaign, like if you don't meet your minimum campaign goal, kind of like Kickstarter, except for t-shirts, right? If this campaign doesn't sell 10 shirts, it's not going to print. Nobody's going to get charged. Nobody's going to get their thing. He said it took 22 failed campaigns or something where he was like spending money on advertising, trying different design ideas before he found one that hit. And I was like, I don't know if I would have the stomach to keep at it on that 22nd losing campaign, to keep pumping money into this. But he's like, I just got to crack the code. I got to find something that works here. And, he kind of had the persistence to stick at it. So one of the common themes, I guess, in all of those examples is like, hey, here's a pre-existing marketplace, right? Here's a marketplace of buyers, and like Amazon. Like if I'm searching on Amazon, it's because like I'm looking for a solution to my problem, probably. If I'm searching on eBay, like I'm expecting to spend some money and buy something. If I'm searching even on Craigslist, yeah, there's a free section, but it's like, hey, it's a marketplace of buyers and sellers. It's just as Fiverr is. Like people are expecting to spend at least $5 when they go on there. So utilizing those platforms as like mini search engines is probably a common theme because like, competing with the entirety of Google for attention, more and more difficult with each passing day. And sure, these platforms are competitive too, but it's like it shrinks it a little bit. Like I went to school at the University of Washington in Seattle, undergrad population 30,000 people, 35,000 people. My freshman orientation leader was like, look, you're gonna have to find a way to shrink the university, otherwise it's just gonna get swallowed up. And I think it's the same way online, like trying to find these smaller marketplaces, these smaller platforms where it's a little bit easier to get discovered, to get noticed. So I talked to a designer who sells on Zazzle.com recently, and she was doing like baby shower invitations, wedding shower invitations. She's like, if you Google baby shower invitations, Zazzle is on the first page. And once somebody's on Zazzle, they can discover my stuff. If I was trying to create my own website and rank for that, like I might be on page 15. Like it would be a battle for discovery that I would probably lose. But, because, I can tap into these, other engines that already exist. Like it's a way for me to get discovered.
Interesting, and I've kind of noticed that too. That it seems like a lot of these marketplaces have cropped up, whereas before you could kind of make a website and hope to be discovered, but now there's these marketplaces where, like you said, like there's a lot of built-in traffic already, and that's the upside to it. But then the downside is that, well, it's competitive. But then on the other hand, what's good about all these marketplaces, at least what I've seen, like whether it's Udemy, Fiverr, whatever, like it's competitive, but at least you can kind of see where you're at, right? Like you can kind of see, like you use Zazzle as an example, which I've never used, but you can plug into this kind of site and see like, okay, I'm ranked on page 15, and then you do a few things and maybe you can push yourself up in the rankings. So I mean, I totally agree with you that that it's sort of like a shortcut to get on these marketplaces, but then it's crowded. But then the sort of the upside to the downside is that you can sort of see where you're ranking. Is that right?
Yeah, even something like iTunes, right, for podcasts, and it's like podcasts are free to download, but and there are more podcasts today than there were yesterday, but it's like an order of magnitude less competitive than like starting a blog, right? If there are whatever the statistic is, 300,000 podcasts in the world, there's 300 million blogs at least, one for every person in the United States. So I heard John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire give a talk a couple years ago. He's like, if you Google entrepreneur, I'm on page 17, but if you search it in iTunes, I'm like, ranked number 2. And it's like, people were, discovering, his show through that medium instead.
And there's your shrinking the universe thing,
Yes.
once again there. And so you do these side hustles and you see people who do side hustles. So is there like a sort of magic number? Because should someone like throw all their eggs in one basket, or should they be like doing things in parallel? I mean, have you seen like a good like path for someone to take if someone had nothing going on? Like, I mean, how split should someone's focus be? Should it be like all in one, or should it be a handful of things, or like what's your opinion there?
It's definitely like a do as I say, not as I do thing. It's like I've got, 8 or 10 different projects going on at any one time. But I think when you're starting out, I think it's important to focus on one thing to the point, at least to the point of validation. Like, so you know, hey, this is going to work or this is not going to work. Reason for that is, if you're trying to do 3 different things at once and you kind of like, kicking the can down the road for each of them, you're not going to be able to necessarily use the lessons learned from project 1 on project 2 until it's too late, if that makes sense. So like I want to, focus on the one thing at a time until there's, until you have an answer, until hey, I can make some money on this, or I'm bored with this, whatever that is, because if you're trying to do 3 things at once, you're probably going to not do a great job at either of them. So we can talk about kind of like the 3, maybe the 3 fastest ways to get started, or the 3 kind of most common ways that I see people getting started having some success.
Yeah.
The first would be, so the first would be kind of tapping into like the peer-to-peer economy, the sharing economy, right? And so this would be like the Ubers of the world, the Airbnbs of the world, the DogVacays of the world, is like Airbnb but for dogs. A friend sent me a note. It's like, I'm gonna make 10 grand this year, like pet sitting on DogVacay. I was like, that's nuts. Like, that's awesome. Yeah, and he's like, he loves dogs. So it's like a perfect side hustle for him. Another guy I reached out to for the recent book launch, Buy Buttons, was having some success on a platform called Turo.com, Turo, and it was like a peer-to-peer car rental service. So instead of going to Hertz, you would go to Turo, and he started putting out his like wife's Mazda like SUV on the site, and it was booked up like all the time. He's like, hey, I travel a lot for work. We rarely need 2 cars, so this was an experiment to test out. After he saw some success on that, he was like, crap, I need more inventory. So he like took out a lease on 2 new Chevy Equinoxes. He's like, man, I was a little nervous because I've added $500 a month to our monthly expenses, but the cars are bringing in $1,500 a month in rental rates. And he's like, we drive to the airport, once a week to meet people renting this thing, and it's like turned into a really cool side hustle. Now he's got this whole like mini fleet. So I think and there's a sharing economy app for like any asset. That's the premise, right? We have underutilized assets in our lives. It's from our car to our spare bedroom to even like different platforms for money. Like I'm a participant in a platform called prosper.com, which is like peer-to-peer loans. Like, so I'm lending, I take fractional ownership in these loans, like for people starting a business or paying down debt or, financing their wedding or whatever. So it's kind of fun to participate in that way as well. So that's sharing economy stuff. Like, I don't know, you play around with any of this stuff? You ever drive for Uber or something like that?
I've never driven for Uber, but I've played around with Fiverr. My business partner, I think in the past year, he's generated like an extra 50,000 just from voiceovers, just from like
Dude.
getting hired for 3 minutes for $20,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, and crazy stuff, and it sounds like from all this, like there's just like opportunities everywhere, and you know what kind of what I thought of maybe 6 months ago was like, I'm sure someone out there has like like figured out a way to max out on all the sharing economy apps. Like, imagine if someone like Airbnb their house and then just parked their garage while doing a dog vacay, and Uber and Turo their car at the same time or something, right? Like, I bet someone out there is like plugged into all the apps at once or something.
Yeah, what if we stack everything on top of the other? Plus, I'm doing online tutoring and voiceover acting and all this stuff. I talked to another guy in New York who was like, we kind of threw a listing up on Airbnb almost on a whim, like to see if there would be any demand. It was like an air mattress in the living room of his 1-bedroom Manhattan apartment for $80 a night. And he was like, honestly, he was like, I'm blown away by the demand. We didn't expect people to be staying with us like every night. And so he actually dialed it back and said, no, okay, now we're just going to rent when we're on vacation. So he and his girlfriend were like taking a trip to Costa Rica, and it's like, hey, for those 14 days we were gone, the apartment was rented out, paid for our whole trip. I was like, dude, that's awesome. He's like, yeah, we just rented like a safe deposit box, to put all the valuables while we were away. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. Like free vacation and, earning some money. So that was pretty fun. You mentioned the voiceover thing, so let's talk about that for a second. So the downside to the sharing economy stuff is, a lot of these platforms like don't have much, you in them. Like you're a commodity, so like you're an Uber driver specifically, right? Like they've continually cut rates, and every time they argue that it's better for drivers, we're trying to increase demand. Overall your fare is going to go up. Like there's very little evidence that that's actually happened, right? And now they're even test driving like a fleet of driverless cars. Like there's no question where they want to go with that, right? And it's the same thing with like all these like delivery services and stuff. If it's something that anybody can do, it's something that anybody will do, and that naturally has like a downward pressure on how much you can earn. Where there's probably more opportunity is with or more upside opportunities, like where you have some unique skills. Like so, like I did voiceover work on Fiverr and made 50 grand. Like that's awesome. I met another gal who was doing voiceover work on like Voices123 or Voices.com, and didn't take long. She was putting in her auditions and stuff, but she's landed clients like REI, clients like Disney World, and I was like, what was the best gig you ever got? And she was like, well, I made $3,000 for like 45 minutes of work one time. And I was like, are you kidding? Like that was an amazing hourly rate. She's like, that's not typical. And I was just, I was like, I got a microphone. I can read. I can talk. She's like, no. You don't understand. It's acting. So I was like she was really trying to play up that, the acting side of it. But you're trying to find those platforms that have your unique skills, or at least give you an opportunity to use your unique skills. So platforms like Fiverr, platforms like Upwork, platforms where you can kind of command a rate that that you have some control over versus just kind of accepting whatever the Uber fare is. So that would probably be tier number 2. Tier number 3 would be kind of like the business model, and we can call tier 2 like freelancing. And so tier number 3 or step number 3 would be kind of like the age-old business model of buy low and sell high. This is exactly what the Craigslist guy was doing at the the beginning of the show. Like buying appliances of all things. Like could you imagine something like bulkier to transport, but that was his specialty. Buying appliances as low as he could and then reselling them for a higher price. Like this is the same model that Amazon uses, that every store in the history of stores use. But like Amazon is an interesting example of that, because I learned that close to half of the inventory on Amazon.com isn't owned by Amazon. Like it's a giant consignment store. Like it's owned by individual sellers and small businesses like you and me, where they're essentially like crowdsourcing their inventory and letting you kind of tap into their like logistics network, which is like awesome. So what I've done, and haven't done it too much this year because we had a baby, but like used to go to, actually we went to Babies R Us because we were making lots of trips there. And like you can use the Amazon seller app on your phone and like scan stuff like from the clearance section at Babies R Us, at Walmart, at Home Depot, and like see what it's worth on Amazon. And sometimes the spread is big enough where you're like, well, shoot, I should buy this and send it in and sell it on, let them sell it on my behalf. So people are doing that, making good money doing that. And kind of the next level beyond that would be like, having your own products manufactured. So we've seen some people do well in a whole different variety of niches there, like trying to find something that's, selling well on Amazon, creating your own competitive product or creating something with a little tweak to it that you think will sell.
And that's cool. And for a few years ago, we were playing around with some Amazon FBA stuff too. Like we got our own magnesium fire starters for camping
Oh,
created
nice.
and send those in. But with that, I mean, especially with like Amazon in particular, and Fiverr's kind of in some of the categories, it's kind of going this way. Like, have you noticed that some of them sort of implode a little bit? Like, maybe get like you mentioned a little bit about like Uber sort of screwing over people a little bit. But even like with Amazon, like we've noticed that like the fees have kind of gone up and up, and some of the categories have become more competitive. So like, have you noticed like within some of these platforms, like sometimes they kind of collapse on people? Have you ever seen that where like, or maybe it's like outlived its usefulness, or kind of is not really like economically feasible anymore?
Yeah, and I think you'll find that with Uber is a good example, right? Like the average tenure of a driver is probably 6 months or 12 months, where it's like, okay, this is not worth it anymore, and that's why they kind of continually have to run new driver incentives. Amazon is a good example of that, where it's like, we're gonna let you tap into our audience of buyers that we've been building for 20 years, and we're gonna let you tap into our logistics network and utilize kind of this fulfillment system that we have built out. But at the end of the day, like this is still our customer and this is still our platform, right? So there's always going to be kind of like that platform risk if you don't control the process start to finish. So like Udemy is another good example of that, right? Like Udemy is an online kind of peer-to-peer education platform where you can upload your own courses and sell those. Something like 12 million students on there at this point. And this year, they kind of made some wholesale changes to their pricing structure and their promotion structure. And at least, so for me, I'd kind of been earning a consistent 3, 4, $500 a month from Udemy, and that immediately got cut, 60% to 100 or $200 a month. Like it was really pretty significant decrease, and thankfully, it wasn't like I'm not relying on this as my sole source of income. But like, it just goes to show when you don't control the platform, there's always going to be some risk there. So like that's what I'm seeing people do on Amazon, like creative, like warranty registration cards, trying to get people onto their own platform, building their own online store where they can save on the fees and they can, do their own, marketing, drive their own traffic and stuff like that. So I would look at these platforms as kind of like a jump start. Like you can use that as an accelerator, to get eyeballs onto your product or service quickly. But ultimately, it's always going to be a safer bet if you can stand alone.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And it sounds like you said, people can kind of use one platform to jumpstart, and maybe if the platform either becomes too competitive or becomes too restrictive or shoots themselves in the foot somehow, it sounds like either you can move to some other platform or kind of just take things to the next logical iteration. So like if someone was, like you said, if someone was selling on Amazon, Amazon becomes too locked down, they can move to say like a Shopify store or something.
Right. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's a whole host of, other challenges in doing that. But ultimately, yeah, if you can drive your own traffic, you can hold better margins. Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to doing that too.
And so we've kind of been talking about and stepping through a lot of these different side hustles. I mean, like Uber, Airbnb, Udemy, Fiverr, stuff like that. And so, when you do your side hustles, actually, like, what is a side hustle versus like a whole business? Like, are we talking like, like part time only, or like a limited number of hours, or why side hustles as opposed to just some regular business building?
Well, I think of it as a lower risk brand of entrepreneurship, right? So you don't have to quit your job, but if you have an extra 5, 10, 20 hours a week and you want to do something productive with that time, like think of it as like for-profit hobbies, right? My friend, loves to play golf and he's become a really good golfer, but the odds of him ever making the tour and making money off that hobby, aside from like, betting his friends per hole, is very, very low. Whereas like my wife had a photography hobby, and she got pretty good at taking pictures. Like I'm probably a little biased, but I think she's pretty good at what she does, and has turned that into a side business. And it's like trying to use that free time more productively. So I don't know, I think of it as like a lower risk. It's like a way to taste the entrepreneurship world, which I believe actually makes you a better employee because you kind of get to think like a CEO, even if it's just on your own 5-10 hour a week business, and without without necessarily having to worry where rent is going to come from next month, where groceries are going to come from next month, and kind of can give you a way to ease into that.
Okay, and do a lot of your crowd, your community, do they just stick with like the side hustle on the side, like they have their their day job or their main income and the thing on the side, or like do these a lot of times that they turn into full blown businesses, or like what usually happens with your people after they take on some of these side hustles for a while?
Some people are like, "Oh, I love my job. I would never want to get out of there." But no, for most people, it's like I'm looking at this as a potential escape route. Like if I can build up my income to a certain level, I am out of here. I would love to be on my own.
Fair enough. And what are your thoughts on that, by the way? Like, where if someone is like in an employee in a 9 to 5 kind of situation and they want to use one of these side hustles, do you have any like advice you could give your past self in that sort of situation? Like, just as far as how to find the time for both things, how to make sure your family life doesn't suffer. What are your thoughts on that whole thing, on the transitioning from the day job to full time with the side hustle as sort of the bridge in the gap?
So have a number in mind of what you want to be bringing in on the side, right? So for me, it was like I want to be able to, cover my fixed expenses for like a period of 6 months or 12 months. Like I want to have that kind of track record of earnings. And some people will be like, they won't even want that much. Like if I can get halfway there in 10 hours a week, just imagine what I could do with an extra 40 hours a week. And they'll make that leap and, build that parachute on the way down. Goes a little bit more conservative on that sound. But like, have a number in mind, have a target in mind so you know kind of what you're shooting for. As far as like, work-life balance and productivity and all that stuff, one thing that I found effective is like tracking your hours. And not necessarily like your working hours, but like trying to figure out, look, we're all dealt the same 24 hours in a day. Where does the time go? And like just by documenting that, so I just use like Google Docs, like or Excel spreadsheet, like trying to figure out where did I actually spend my time? And you'll find that it kind of gamifies it a little bit, and you'd be like, I can't believe I just spent 25 minutes on email. Like, where did that get me? And all of a sudden, I think you'll be able to unlock some extra hours for that, and move things forward a little bit quicker. I don't know. Do you have any favorite productivity hacks?
I mean, at least for me, I like to do four things every day. I like to do one thing that's like a 10-minute task, and usually it's something like, sending an email to my list, like a broadcast email or updating social media, and then I like to do three other tasks that are 45 minutes each. That way I'm not falling into the sort of that trap that you mentioned where, you sit at the computer and next thing you know, you're like, I've been here for 3 hours just playing on Twitter, checking on email. So that's like my biggest thing is I like to do four tasks every single day.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown.
And have you noticed, like, at least in your experience, when you were transition, so you did transition out of a day job, right?
Yes.
So do you prefer that method, or would you have preferred like maybe if you had been like fired or laid off, and then you would have had maybe like the scarier financial situation but more time? And which do you prefer? Would you prefer like driving the driving off the cliff that you mentioned, or did you prefer the slow transition?
Well, I think it would have been a lot scarier. W- yeah, I'd rather be in charge of my own destiny. um,
Fair enough.
rather than having it forced upon me. Although there's something to be said for that, where it's like, I've actually talked to a lot of people like, oh, I got laid off, or I got, so I kind of used that time or used that period of unemployment to say, hey, you know what, maybe you don't need to get another job. Like maybe there's an alternative path. So I've definitely seen people do it both ways, which is I don't know, like that would be scary for me.
But if someone is kind of forced in that way, then it could be like a blessing in disguise for them, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
And so, I mean, and we mentioned a lot of different types of side hustles and lots of different sort of ideas. And I mean, have you ever either come across or created or thought about something where someone could even sort of like take a test and narrow down like which thing they should do? I mean, have you thought about that, or does something like that exist, like a sort of way to decide what to do and what platform to use?
I had a quiz on the site for a while. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know. It wasn't very good. I used the Quizzer QZZR software to like, make this little quiz, like, answer these questions and it'll spit back out, what type of side hustle is right for you. But uh, I don't know. Really, the biggest challenge is like, picking one thing that sounds interesting or sounds doable, that you think you'll actually take action on and execute on. And then, once you see some results from that, I think you'll be kind of addicted to the process. Whether or not you want to stick with that thing, I think earning those dollars and seeing those results kind of like is the empowering moment, because all of a sudden it's not, you're no longer defined by what it says on your business card or by your job title. It's like, hey, look, I have worth outside of my job. And I think that's like a really empowering moment.
Right, and it's a good way to kind of shut up the haters, right? Like if you're just that guy that everyone laughs at where like, you're playing around on the internet, that's one thing. But if you can say, well, I made X number of dollars or I made enough to quit my job, then anyone who's kind of being a naysayer doesn't really have much of a leg to stand on.
Yeah, and I like to set it up as like, maybe mini targets. Like everybody wants to, be able to pay their rent with their side hustle, but it's like, what if you start, ridiculously small. Like what if you could pay for your cell phone bill, or what if you could pay for your car insurance or your groceries, or whatever it is. Like kind of working your way up the snowball that way. It lets you celebrate kind of like the mini wins, right? Like, oh, I sold a gig on Fiverr, and that pays for my Dollar Shave Club membership, or something, something dumb like that.
Right, and I like that because that way it's just those small attainable milestones, like you're taking the stair steps up, as opposed to hoping that you'll win the lottery. And sort of along those lines, have you come across with any of the people that you've talked to or whatever, where maybe they either like have some of that fear of success, where like they get all like almost to the money making point and then stop? Or have you seen any people who maybe they've been trying, and when they make that first little bit of money, they kind of get discouraged and quit? I mean, have you come across that at all?
I don't know. I think I talked to a lot of hustlers who are ready to take it to the next level. I mean, one guy who comes to mind who will remain anonymous. Like he runs like a really engaged like email business, I guess email service, where he sends out like a daily message with like, hey, here are the top 3 articles in this industry every day. And I'm like, dude, what kind of open rates do you see? It's like, oh, probably 50, 60%. Like that's unheard of. Like you have a really engaged list, like, thousands and thousands of people get these messages every day. Like, how are you not, selling sponsorships in this? How are you not promoting affiliate products in this? Like, how are you not like even just like having a book of the week and linking it to Amazon or something? Like it's like I don't know. There's, sometimes you see stuff like that and you're like, oh, man, if this was my business, I could be making some money with that. But I think most people are pretty good about seizing those opportunities in a way that makes sense for them. Because, like, there's also there's probably also something to it. Like, if he wanted to go down that path, like he already would have.
But do you think that, I mean, these people who are doing their side hustles, do you think that they could all sort of benefit from either a coach or like that outside perspective, like you're saying, where someone who's maybe not so deep into that business can sort of see the flaws, or see the opportunities, or like see the things that if only they would kind of do this one thing, it would just explode their business? I mean, do you see like a need for that?
Well, absolutely. I've definitely seen value from mastermind groups, from even like listening to other podcasts as kind of mentorship, where it's like, oh, I never thought about that. Or, I can, even though this guy's business was unrelated, like I can apply XYZ to my operation. So yeah, absolutely.
And what are your thoughts along those lines of like, like I mean, we all hear that, we should, try different things and be like always reading and always listening. But I mean, what are your thoughts on being more focused and on not being so scatterbrained like a lot of us entrepreneurs are?
Again, this is going to be like a do as I say, not as I do thing. I'm trying to get better about practicing that just-in-time learning, which is actually a phrase I first heard from one of my podcast guests. And he was like, look, I don't even have a website because it doesn't matter yet. I'm trying to practice just-in-time learning. When I need one, I'll build one. But like, at this point, I'm getting clients without it. So, why bother? Whereas other people are like, I gotta make a logo, I gotta incorporate, I gotta, get business cards, I gotta build this website. And they end up kind of like putting off the hard thing, which is actually getting a customer, for all this stuff that, they think is important, but it's really just like kind of an excuse to procrastinate.
And you know what? Along those lines, like I can definitely relate to that, and I think that what really hit home for me as far as like those two extremes, like one is, I don't need to know this until I actually need it, as opposed to people who kind of plan their whole life ahead. Like I used to work with someone, I used to have a business partner where he would do that last scenario you just described. Like he would get super excited about a project, and we would name it, and then he would make this list of things that he needed to do, and he would go and pick off the fun or the easy tasks first, right? Which like
Yeah.
sounds at first, like when you before you do it, sounds like a good idea. Like, oh, of course I'll get the graphics made, right? Of course I'll get the domain name. Of course I get the business cards made. And then what I noticed with this particular person was after he had did those handful of things, he kind of felt sort of satisfied and also tired and like accomplished, when he had done all of the unimportant things and none of the important things. So I could totally relate to that, and I can totally relate to sort of pushing yourself towards the side of the just in time learning, where I think a lot of people, I've seen so many people just kind of falling on that trap of plan out the whole next 6 months and then kind of cherry pick the things that they want to do, where they put in all this time, maybe spent some money and have nothing, as opposed to if they had just done the bare minimum to get up and running, then they would actually be further along than choosing the wrong things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've totally been there, right? Where it's like, somebody will send you an email and it'd be like, come to my webinar on Thursday, and I'd be like, well, that sounds interesting. I should totally do that. And it's like that really had nothing to do with my number one goal for the week. It's like it's kind of a distraction, and like I'll keep it in my inbox. Like I'm sure if especially if there's a recording and eventually I want to learn about whatever the topic that is, like that could still be a good resource for me. But it's like, okay, is this relevant to me right now, or is this like relevant to what I'm trying to accomplish right now? And if it's not, maybe it's still going to be there, or it'll happen again.
Right. It'll find its way to me again if it's that important.
Yeah.
And so that sort of bright shiny object syndrome. I mean, do you think that is that like the number one biggest mistake you see happening with all these people trying to do their side hustles, or is there something even bigger that the people keep coming across that they should be fixing?
I don't know. Like I'm not. I don't know. That's a good question. Like I don't know what's really, the biggest like failure point. I mean, to get like really technical, the biggest failure would be is always cash flow. Why do businesses fail? Well, they're not bringing in enough money. They're not making enough sales. So that's probably the biggest point. Where I think what gets people, what prevents people from getting started is kind of like the trifecta of time, money, and ideas. It's like I don't have enough time, I don't have the right idea, and I don't have enough capital to get this thing off the ground. It's like, well, realistically, how much do you really need to get started? Like if you carved out an hour a day, if you carved out half an hour a day, like could you make some meaningful progress if you just made a date with yourself on the calendar to like just get this done I think at the end of the month you would look back and like, well, each half hour individually probably isn't that big, but like, to do that for 30 days consecutively, all of a sudden you made more progress than you thought you might. So it's the same thing with like, going to the gym. It's like you ever read, what's the book? You ever read The Slight Edge?
No, heard of
I
it
really
though.
like, I really like that one because it was like, these daily habits, that on the surface aren't going to make a lick of difference one way or the other, right? Like go to the gym, don't go to the gym today, right? You're not going to get a six pack and you're probably not going to die of a heart attack. So you could skip it or you could go, it's not going to make any difference. But like the habit of continually going, all of a sudden, you start to see like kind of the cumulative effect of doing that. And likewise, the cumulative effect of not going, and you start to trail down into obesity and all these other things. So it's like so I'm trying to be more conscious of like, what are the slight edge habits, in my day. And, I think something like writing, I think something like putting out the podcast every week, continually, being consistent on some of those things, have been really important for me.
And I think that's really good advice. I think that anyone who is an entrepreneur or pursuing some kind of side hustle should definitely pay attention to that. I think that sort of like what I'm hearing a lot of is like maybe the people who are failing are super impatient, and those of us that are succeeding. I mean, I wouldn't say us entrepreneurs are patient, but we know that we have to keep at it, right? And we have to build that muscle. And I mean, you use that example of going to the gym, where like, if you go just to the gym one time, well, nothing's really going to happen. But if you make it a habit, you don't even have to really do that much, but just make it, part of your everyday thing, and just go a little bit at a time. And what I also like about that way of thinking is okay, like maybe you go to the gym, maybe you get in shape, but if you miss that one day in the gym, it's okay because you have all those other days, right? Sort of like if you pig out one day, if you eat a whole box of Oreo cookies, well, you're not going to suddenly gain a bunch of weight, but if you do that every day, then you will, right? So it's sort of like you can build up this machine, especially like with your business, like, and especially with one of these sorts of platform, these side hustle sorts of platforms, like you can build up this whole machine that just like has all this momentum. And like us both, we're two guys with 200 episodes of the podcast. Someday we'll have thousands of episodes, and it's not just like we stopped at one episode, because one episode doesn't mean much, right? Or like, you could put out a Kindle book that's making, $1 a month, $5 a month, not much there. But if you do that every day and you have hundreds of Kindle books, then that adds up to a lot. And I'm same thing with everything we're talking about, right? With Fiverr, Airbnb, like it's like the sum of all these little transactions.
Yeah, the Kindle is a good example too, where it's like kind of this portfolio business. Have you had Steve Scott on your show?
Nope. Should I?
He's a pretty prominent Kindle author, but it was like maybe his 40th book that was like his big hit, like his big breakthrough. And of course, he made sales and was making a living off of his portfolio prior to that. But that's like really what put him on the map. Started earning tens of thousands of dollars a month from this one title. And if you weren't in love with the process of writing, there's no way you would have gotten to 40 titles, and kind of kept at it, all that, as in which each one, his platform grows, his email list grows.
And I like that little hidden gem in there too, is that there needs to be some sort of like love for the thing itself. It sounds like maybe you have to love writing or love doing your podcast or even to some extent like love doing that Uber driving. But it sounds like in order to get through that difficult growing period, like it sounds like you've gone through with some of these side hustles that some of your guests have gone through. It sounds like in order to get through sort of that initial rough patch when it hasn't quite picked up steam yet, you have to have that love for the thing you do.
Yeah, so my original side business was a footwear comparison shopping site. It was called shoesniper.com. And so the slight edge in that business was kind of like the daily inventory management. So this was footwear, and so there's a lot of seasonality to it. And so we would turn over 1 to 2% of the database every day as products would go out of stock and new inventory would come in. And so we're driving a lot of paid traffic, a lot of AdWords traffic to the site. And so you could let that go 1 day, 2 days. 1% of your ads are going to be ineffective, 2% of your ads are going to be ineffective. Probably still going to be profitable, not a problem, right? But leave that for a week, all of a sudden 7% of your inventory is out of stock. You leave it for 2 weeks, now almost a sixth of your inventory is out of stock. And so it's kind of like the daily habit of going in, updating the ads, maintaining this database, like really is what, allowed that thing to keep spinning and keep growing.
Awesome. I mean, and so we've talked about a lot of stuff on this show, and I don't want to keep you too long, but sort of as we're winding this down today, I mean, out of all these side hustles that you've come across, is there one that's just like super weird and super goofy and out there, but still makes money?
Super weird side hustle. Um, so in the book, in Buy Buttons, there are some really random ones. It goes through 300 different platforms and in marketplaces, kind of like we've both been talking about. Some of the random ones that I came across, probably the weirdest one was a site called Cuddle Up, which is like a peer-to-peer marketplace for cuddling. It's super creepy. My wife was like, "You're gonna have to delete your cookies now," because it was like I saw rates from like $95. I'll come over and cuddle with you. And then I saw a rate of 0, and then I was like, I don't know which one is creepier.
Oh, jeez. Or what would be even worse is like negative, like if they paid you to cuddle with you, right?
Yeah, you're right. That would be worse. I'm trying to think of like, different ones from the archives, weird ones. I met a guy who had a vending machine business, which was, like you say, I bought this vending machine off a dude on eBay. It was $36. I filled it up with gumballs from Sam's Club and, just went door to door in this little strip mall until I found a karate studio to host, or, hey, can I put the gumball in the corner of your studio? And went back a couple weeks later and it was filled up with quarters. And he's like, oh my gosh, it was my first taste of like passive income. And he was just like, quarters are flying all over the floor. And so I parlayed that in the next vending machine and then that one into the next, and just like built this empire up, really slowly. So I really like that story. I met another dude who was a raw land investor, which sounds just kind of crazy. So he had a whole system where he's like, I'm targeting specifically out of state landowners, which I guess this is public record. So you can go onto like any county in the country and find out, who owns these parcels. So he's looking for out of state owners who owe back taxes. So those two criteria, and sending them offer letters like, hey, you owe whatever $3,000 on this parcel. I'll make that go away for you, plus give you however much, whatever his offer is for the parcel, and then tries to turn around and resell that. And he was like, for somebody who doesn't want to deal with tenants and toilets and all the difficult things that normally come with being a landlord, here's a way to make money off of real estate without having to do any of that. I was like, man, there's just a million different ways, and I love it. It's really exciting to talk to people who are making it happen and try some of the stuff out myself.
It sounds exciting. It sounds awesome. And I knew of a few of these sort of goofy new ways of making money, but I mean, you really opened my eyes to just how crazy it's become in a good way. Of like, there's all these, all these things people can pursue and just try them out really quickly. I mean, I think that even just as you were describing, like the sharing economy on these different platforms, I mean, and side hustles in general. I mean, people don't have to completely quit everything else they're doing. They can just, try something for 30 minutes a day, for an hour a day, and sort of see how it goes. And if it's not for them, drop it and try something else. And if it works well, then they can make those additional steps to kind of see where it goes and grow the business and see if that's something more that they should go and pursue. And so you've mentioned this Buy Buttons book, and you've mentioned your side hustle podcast and blog. So can you tell us about those things and about your websites and stuff like that?
You bet. The book is at buybuttonsbook.com. That'll redirect you over to Amazon. It's the fast track strategy to make extra money and start a business in your spare time. It really kind of goes into this marketplace theory. The theory, like if you want to make extra money, go where the cash is already flowing, and lists, just hundreds of these different marketplaces where you can do just that. The blog or the podcast you can find at sidehustlenation.com, and lots of fun in the archives. I think you'll have a good time. I'll send Robert some links with some of the episodes that we mentioned.
Awesome. So buybuttonsbook.com and sidehustlenation.com. And man, this is one of the most fun podcast interviews we've done on the show so far. And I'm glad that this was the big round 200 because we definitely heard about, I mean, lots of just low impact, just fun ways, and sometimes weird ways, like that cuddle up site. I don't think I'm going to join that, but I'm definitely gonna look at the website out of curiosity because that just seems super crazy. That there's all these new ways of making money. So thanks for sharing some of that stuff with us, Nick, and thanks for opening our eyes up to these new possibilities, and thanks for hopping on the show and sharing your time.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me.
Try this. Just try it, and you can say goodbye to WordPress anxiety forever. WordPress is an amazing tool for running your website, but the problem is that your site and your plugins can go out of date. Many websites are hacked every single hour due to out of date sites and plugins. Don't become another statistic. Do the right thing and install Website Remote on your websites. That way, your sites will never go out of date again. They'll never be broken by automatic updates, and you'll always have control over those websites in one location. Go to websiteremote.com/.